Okay, in today's video, we're going to go over some knives. This isn't everything I own. This is not all great stuff. There's admittedly some things in here that many knife aficionados would consider garbage or not useful, whatever. But there's a pretty good representation of a lot of different styles here and construction techniques, and they're used for different purposes. And I just want to kind of quickly go over it as it affects how you would use any of these things or why you would even want to own any of them. And it kind of goes in line with the survival aspect of things and having a bag, a bug out bag, go bag, whatever you want to call it. In this first row here, what's going on is just some hollow handle knives. Now, these are pretty much, there's nothing special about those top three, but these two here are special. We'll get into that because I really want to talk about those. And then these are all fixed blade, full tang. We'll get into this, and this is important. We'll get into that in a moment. Of course, got the old K-bar. This is just a Mexican Bowie. I'll show you that off. These have no real purpose in life other than strictly killing people. They're daggers. These here are bayonets. It's for my M1 carbine, M16, M1 Garand World War II original from the war. This is just a bayonet I bought that works on my shotgun. I might throw an insert of that on there. It's kind of fun. I don't even know why I have this. It's pretty much useless for anything. This is the World War II USMC Corpsman's knife. And these two things here are really bizarre. I'll get into those. Of course, we have I found this sheath finally for the Air Force survival knife. And I want to start with this right here. I highly recommend this book, okay? If you are into camping, hiking, outdoors, woodcraft, survivalist stuff, primitive woodworking, primitive traps, living in the woods that way. This is an amazing book, and it's very funny. This guy was the man, and I just wanted to quickly show you, these are the tools he used. Now, this was a different time, all right? This is turn of the last century. And what you see here is this blade here is very, very, very reminiscent of this blade right here. It's a full tang, it's very thin, but this is really the sort of knife that people carried for a very long time. What we see today in full tang, super thick, quarter-inch thick knives that are full tang, that's more of a modern design. And I'll get into that in a moment here. I just want to point out, what these were used for, because this was, processing animals and everything. And some woodcraft. This is whittling, woodcraft, traps, and all that. And back then, you had a hatchet. One side was for chopping, and the other side was for, I can't even think right now. Splitting. So splitting and chopping are two different things. People weren't batoning back then like we do today. And you have to keep that in mind. When you see all the knives that are made today where they're pretty much indestructible, where you can do this batoning and all that, a really thick blade knife, it's a little hard to fillet fish with that. And, there's nothing that's 100% perfect. Everything that you have has its positives and negatives, okay? I'm going to pick up a few of these and one at a time go over them. I do want to just jump real quick here because I want to point something out. I think I might be able to find it quick enough. And, this is the page here. He's got a mosquito, 3 ounces of pine. Hang on a second here. Pine tar, 2 ounces of castor oil, 1 ounce pennyroyal oil. I don't even know where you get that. Simmer all together on a slow fire and bottle for use. This is a natural mosquito and bug repellent. So it's just the stuff that's in this book. That's just old school knowledge that people knew back in the day, along with real stories. You can screenshot this if you'd like. But I highly recommend this book. It's not a very big book. Hang on, I'm going to show you a shelf really quick. Tilt it sideways so you can read it better. But Back to Basics is a book you should have if you want to know how to do everything there is to do. There's some combat stuff. This goes back to my old life here. We don't need to get into all that. But these are all survival manuals here, pretty much. Although Our Occulted History is a really good book. Yeah, some conspiracy theorist stuff going on here. I highly recommend something like this in your truck, and also the SAS Survival Manual. That's important stuff to have. And just real quickly, want to get back to this. So, in today's world, it's just different. You don't see, some people still carry hatchets. What seems to be more prevalent are folding saws, a decent knife, and then, yeah, you always have something small. So you don't really see the double-bladed hatchet anymore, but, you know, they're out there. And I showed you in another video earlier, I think I did. I made a video I might not have posted yet. I did show the tomahawk, and that's kind of my thing. If I want a complete setup, I'm going to have a tomahawk, a decent full-tang knife, and a small knife, and the folding saw. Now, this thing here, we're going to get into this, does replace a tomahawk or a hatchet because it does chop like an axe. I did a whole video on that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that now. Let me just talk over some of these blade designs, why some of these are garbage, and some of the interesting features of the others. I think some of you will find this entertaining. Okay, let's just get this out of the way really quick. What you have here is pretty much useless for the real world. It's strictly, not this, this is great, combat oriented, okay? This is, you know, what you'd call a dagger. It's double bladed, right? It's sharp on both sides. The only purpose of this is being stabby, all right? Just dispatch something very quickly. I'll quickly show you this because this is just one of those old things that's been around. I think this might actually be something. I don't know enough about it, but I can tell you that the blade on this is no joke. It's actually very thick here. Very, very sharp. It's a quality steel, but it is just a cast aluminum handle. It was pretty grubby and had tape wrapped around it when I got it. I cleaned it up a bit, but try not to take too much off. I don't know much about it, if anything, but you can see, I think, the difference in the thickness between this one up top and the bottom one. And, you know, this one here is much better quality. This is garbage. Keep in mind, too, I didn't spend money on most of this stuff. These things came to me, left to me. I found some things. I might pick something up at a swap meet, dirt cheap. It's not like I spent a bunch of money on this. This is just a goof, I suppose. We'll just call it that. Again, good for nothing other than stabby. All right? That's all this is. Stabby. One of those things. A bayonet, it's the same sort of thing. Now, a bayonet, you can do a lot with it. But again, this is actually very, very sharp. This, I believe this is the M4. You can do some camp tasks. Yes, you can open a can, that sort of thing. These are designed to be tough enough to do that. I have to say here that when you watch these other videos that are destruction videos, that's what they are. They're destruction videos. You can break anything. Just because you can break one of your other type knives doesn't mean you have to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on a super crazy, quarter-inch thick, full-tang, handmade knife that you're never going to put through that kind of abuse anyhow. This is kind of neat just because it's the M1 Garand. This button is how you release it from the sheath. Also how you release it from the weapon. When you push down on this, it lifts this little, it's a lever in there that, all right, pretty cool. I don't want to spend much time on these because, again, you're not going to use any of these in a survival situation unless it's the only thing you have, right? This is a Smith & Wesson bayonet. There's plenty of reviews on all of these things. I don't need to do this for you. Again, I bought this mostly as a goof to put on the end of my Mossberg 590A1 military shotgun with the heat shield and all that. And that was mainly because I wanted to do a photo shoot with it. I'm not going to ever use this thing, right? I mean, I'm never going to, what am I going to use this for? But it was neat and it was inexpensive. All right, I'm going to push all these to the side and we're going to get into the serious stuff now. Okay, I kind of lied. Let me just show you these real quick. These two things here I picked up at a swap meet in a lot. So there was several knives there, and I got them all. I mean, it was crazy. Like a box of them, I talked the guy into $20. And I'm sure these are made in Pakistan, something like that, or India. But they're actually pretty well made, and even the sheaths are pretty decent, thick leather. And this is actually pretty amazing. I'm going to get a tape measure out for you. So I thought this was really interesting because this is basically a more modern copy of a Gladius. This is pretty much exactly, and the irony is, the methods that you see here to construct this knife are probably way closer to how they were made 2,000 years ago. That's the crazy thing about it. And it's actually, you can see, it's kind of, you see the rainbow color in the steel. That's like a color case hardened thing. That happens when you're tempering these blades. It's got this long fuller in it. It's double bladed. It actually has an edge on it. Now, I've been meaning to knock down the sharp corners on this handle and make this a little smaller and then wrap it with wire probably to make it more comfortable, although I'm probably never really going to use it. But just to talk about dimensions here, this is what you call a short sword, straight up. That's a 14-inch blade right there. Overall, we're about 21¼ inches on this thing. That's ridiculous. Now, modern situation, what are you going to use that for? Nothing. Nothing at all. It's pretty cool. You have it hang in your living room. You have a weapons collection. That's kind of neat. Again, I only have it because I thought it was neat and I got a whole bunch of knives for almost nothing. Now, I also like it because it's kind of a historic representative of the evolution of knives and combat knives in general. Back when people were using these, firearms didn't exist. That was it, man. That was it. So, just a neat thing, that's all. Just neat. Now this thing, now we start getting down to, this is the sort of knife that you could have had in 18th century into the 19th century. It's a kind of a long blade. It's like a crazy Bowie knife here. Again, the sheath is actually not terrible. It is riveted. It's only single needle stitching, but this here is more historically accurate to a knife from that period. The way that that closes there, which I really, really like. I mean, this is, it's actually pretty comfortable. If you look at the handle profile, I would take this down thinner here, which I probably will do. These are designed really to help capture a blade in a knife fight. Not that you're going to get into one. This is almost big enough to fit a finger in, and it should be. We're going to get into that with more practical knives here in a moment. We're going from fantasy to practicality on knives here. That's a brass pommel. The end of the tang you can see here. So that goes all the way through. It's kind of a rat tail tang. Solid brass, 1/4 inch thick, clip point blade. This is, I got to tell you, both of these blades would do the job. I mean, if you were a hand-to-hand combat fight with somebody, these things are pretty wild. If you pulled this out, I mean, think about it. If you did pull this out on somebody, they're probably going to run for the hills, man. I mean, especially if they don't have a firearm on them. But again, just something kind of kooky. It's a great blade shape. It's way too long for anything practical. So if you're going to leave comments below, I already know what you're going to say, and I agree with you. So don't waste your time. This blade is 12.5 inches long, overall 18 1/4. again, just something kind of neat. It's real. It'll take something out, but I wouldn't go using this for campcraft. That's over way, way, way over the top, right? And what we have here, I did a whole other video on it. It's been in other videos. It's very cool. I'm not going to get into the whole history of it, but it is the USMC Bolo corpsman's knife from World War II. You know, full tank, 1/4 inch thick, high carbon steel. I modified it. It's slightly shorter than it was originally. You can see it's been used. This thing chops amazingly. The steel is so good. You can put an edge on this you can shave with. This right here, I would say, it's pretty much about the maximum as far as modern day bushcraft, camp knife. I don't think that you really want to get larger than that. And this thing is a beast. This thing's a beast. You don't want to go whacking around. You wouldn't want to necessarily use this as a machete. It's just heavy, wear you out by the end of the day. But to have a tough knife instead of a hatchet or an axe, this thing does chop like either of those things. For batoning, processing wood, you can see I added jimping here. I added the divot so you can use it with a bow drill. I never did it, but it's there if you want to. It's Purple Heart scales. So yeah, this thing here has been living in the van just because I don't always have a hatchet or a tomahawk in there. So it's pretty big. So I figure that's the perfect thing to leave in the van. You know, I don't want to be carrying that thing around. That's probably over a pound of solid steel right there easily. Now we're going to get on to the practical. And some other things here that are not as practical, but at least they're not gigantic. This is a very cheap, probably Pakistani-made Bowie knife. This is what the Bowie knife really evolved into. I personally think that Jim Bowie probably had something like this. I think the earliest records of it is he had a butcher's knife. And I think he probably went to a knife maker and said, make me one of these, but make it stouter. And so it was probably a lot thicker and beefier enough to where people commented on it. I think that's basically what it boils down to. But by the 20th century, the design elements in this crappy knife here is what was accepted as a Bowie knife. Large blade, clip point, cross guard. Now this here is really a replica of the Western Bowie, and you can find these, you can get these on eBay, the original Western knives, 1/4 inch thick steel, quality steel, for under $200, anywhere from $130 to $190. Now this thing is full tank, and I'm pretty certain it would hold up to some abuse. I don't think it's going to handle what you see in these modern destruction videos. It would be interesting to see. Why do I have it? I was into cowboy action shooting for a while. So I bought this. I intended to make a better sheath for it, more period correct sheath, and have this as part of my cowboy action shooting outfit. That was kind of the deal. And then we got into reloading, and we're spending a bunch of money on it. It was me and 2 other pals. And then that just kind of ended up falling apart. I had other interests, motorcycle riding and all that kind of thing. So it is Pakistan. But this is what you would call your classic Bowie. Now, what's interesting is, I don't know why I'm so congested all of a sudden. Sorry. But what's interesting is, in World War II, Western made these knives. Also, Case made them, and I think Collins. And Collins made a Marine Raider Bowie that is pretty much these specs, but even thicker on the spine. It was like a full 1/4 inch thick. It had horn handles. Those things now are worth their weight in gold, pretty much. I mean, this is just your classic thing. Now, you look at this thing, it's clearly more of a fighting combat knife. However, it's very practical in the woods. You can dig with it. Nice broad blade you could dig with. Everyone back then that carried something like this was proficient in sharpening. They carried their own sharpening steels or stones on them. Sharpening stones was or sharpening knives back then, that was like the 8-year-old on the farm. That's probably one of his tasks, that he had to do. I mean, back then, 8-year-olds were going out in the woods and setting snares and shooting critters and bringing home fish. They were bringing home the dinner while their parents were working the land and doing everything else they had to do. So it was just a different time back then. So it's neat because it's a representation of what the true Bowie evolved into. And knives very similar to this, but obviously much better made, were issued to troops all the way up into the Vietnam War. That is crazy. You can easily chop wood with this, baton, all kinds. Now, when I say this, I mean better quality versions of this, although I suspect this would actually hold up pretty well until it didn't. And of course, we have the classic K-bar, which is a miniature version of your full-size Bowie knife. Clip point. You guys know how great the K-bar is. It's just, I forget the name of the company originally, but they changed the company name to K-bar because of how, the name recognition really, after World War II, how well these things held up. You know, you're going to see videos out there where people just destroy these things and hit them with baseball bats after they've been abused, eventually break, and then they talk a bunch of smack like it's not a tough enough knife because it didn't hold up to the abuse they're giving it. Well, the abuse that you see them giving these knives is impractical. You're not going to do that with your knife in real life. In real life, this knife right here, I actually had this in the Corps in the 80s. Unchanged, right, from World War II. This knife right here was able to open cans, be used as a camp knife, pound tent stakes, crack things open with the pommel, and dispatch the enemy. It did all those things. It did all those things without breaking. The only issue you had with this knife, especially in the South Pacific, was the leather handle just kind of failing after a while, possibly, right? If they didn't oil it, this has been oiled, you'll see them when they're dried out. Problem when you see a knife that has, this isn't an as dry, but this should be oiled. This is the Air Force survival knife. You want to oil these leather stacked handles so that they stay pliable and swollen. Once they dry out, and you've seen it, you'll find that the cross guard gets wiggly and all that. So you want to, you got to take care of your stuff, man. But that was the thing. So you'll see the USMC, the K-bar, you'll see the Navy knife, which is similar, a little smaller, with, you could call it an aftermarket handle, but they were like theater-made handles in many respects. On those naval ships, there was whole machinist shops on there. So they'd make lucite handles, they'd stack lucite and other materials, including leather. They would do cast aluminum, brass, all kinds of nifty handles they put on these things. Those knives are actually, there's a whole collector's market for those theater modified blades. But this here, people do call this a Bowie because of the shape of the blade. To this day, I believe this is still a viable camp knife. For the most of the things you're going to use it for, it's going to be fine, and you can baton with it. Now, this tang gets small in here. Everybody talks about that. Clearly, because full tang knives exist today, you'd want to use that for batoning. But you're going to use what you have, right? If you have this, you can do quite a bit with it. If you have this and a hatchet, or if you have this and the USMC cornerman knife, you got something else to baton with. You know what I'm saying? Use the proper tool for the proper job. Okay, sticking with the military theme for the moment. Here is your Air Force survival knife. Again, it's like a mini Bowie blade, clip point. I'm not going to get too into this. I mentioned this on another video recently. I'm glad I found the correct sheath for it, but just something kind of neat. Now we're going to move on to some other things here. Firstly, I want to get back to this and talk about this. This sheath came with another knife we're going to talk about in a minute. And this is just a kitchen knife that's in here, okay? This was in the garbage. I found this knife in the garbage. It's actually a quality knife, full tang, comfortable handle. Why am I showing you this? This right here is a decent camp knife. It's pretty light, and you could do so much with this at camp. I mean, you could fillet fish with this thing, process an animal. If you had to, this is actually not a bad combat knife, honestly. When you look at the knives that existed back in the day, that people used, that are still around, and how they're constructed, this thing is constructed better. So this goes into the category of thriftiness. This cost me nothing, literally taken out of the garbage. That's amazing when I think about it. Again, something like this. You need a knife for the pack. You don't have to go spending hundreds of dollars. You could find these things. You can go to a swap meet or your local, what do they call those stores where people bring stuff in? I can't think. It'll come to me as the video goes on, I'm sure. Like used stores, thrift shops, things like that. And pick these things up for $1 a piece, $2. You got yourself a knife that'll do the job, most of the job. I'm just going to quickly talk about this. This is something I found at a swap meet. It was pitted and rusted. It's a spear end. It's a hollow handle. You can make a stick for it. Now, it's not practical as a camp knife or a survival knife necessarily because both edges are sharpened. I've been meaning to make a sheath for this. But, you know, if you were really into like kooky stuff, there's people that go out in the woods and they do the full-on, you know, primitive thing where they're spearing their own food and everything. I just thought it was neat. I think I spent $5 on this thing, and I took it home, cleaned it up on a wheel, and painted it. And I just stumbled upon it today. I forget I even own this thing. But again, I don't see this as a practical survival knife, but that is a hunting tool. And, you know, that's a fighter. But it's a silly thing to be carrying around in your backpack, probably. All right, these two knives I didn't spend any money on. They're both well-made knives. I used to do a lot of work for a guy that would hem and haw sometimes about money. So, and he owned a shop. I designed and built the interior for the shop, and he would sell things like this and others, and I would take things from him in trade because he owed me. That's a nice full tang. I believe this is surgical steel. At the very least, it's stainless. I've been meaning to blue this knife just to knock the glare down on it. What I like about this handle is the shape. That helps you register this thing in your hand. Round handles, which we're going to get to in a moment, can be a little bit of a pain when you're doing certain tasks. Okay? It's just a nice quality. Now this right here, let's get into this. I don't keep forgetting to measure things for you. But this right here, the size of this knife, it's just over 6 inches in blade length. It's about 10 3/4 of an inch long. This is a really good quality camp knife. I don't think you're going to break this thing. It's a good length. You can actually carry this on your person. The sheath, nice thick leather. Now, it's lacking rivets. I could always put some rivets in it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's enough room in this thing. I move this side to side here. Get this out of the way. Oops. There may be enough room for me to put a small rivet in each corner here next to the threads. I don't know. But this is it's a decent quality knife. We're getting now into real knives, like the sorts of knives that you can actually use in a real situation, camping situation, survival, that sort of thing. What I don't like about this knife is the distance from the guard to the beginning of the blade because it's not large enough to put a finger in. I like to be able to grab a knife and wrap a finger around the guard so I can get up close and do whittling or make feather sticks, that sort of thing. You've got more control over a knife like that. I've been meaning to take a Dremel and cut that down, make it larger, and then file that smooth. And I will be doing that at some point. The next knife, which is right behind it, again, another one. This is really a neat knife, and this gets more, to me, it looks more of like a historical knife from the 18th century. But it is Damascus steel. It's a bone handle. You've seen this before, probably. It usually lives on the cutting block I made, and I made a wood holder that's the same shape as this, and it just sits in that block on an angle and just looks badass. So typically it's on my kitchen table there, just sitting there looking cool. And again, one of the issues is you can't get a finger in here. So of course I can't manipulate this one. I can't modify this one as easily because it would kind of destroy the integrity here. I don't think it's going to make it weak like a breaking point or anything. It just wouldn't look right. But I don't like that I can't get a finger. Now, showing you this would be one of the reasons to carry an extra piece of leather in your kit to wrap around that, or at the very least, a pair of leather gloves. You should always have a pair of leather gloves in your kit. If you have a pair of leather gloves in your kit, you can do this sort of thing and you're not going to hurt yourself. I love this thing. I just think it's super cool. Again, full tang Damascus steel. This is a pretty good quality knife here. What we have here, now I think this knife came out 10 years ago. This is a pretty decent quality survival knife made by Schrade. Prices on all these knives have gone way up now because people realize what they are. That's a solid 1/4 inch thick. I believe these are all 1070, these Schrade knives. It's got a nice belly on it. When you see a blade shape like this, I'm not going to get too into the weeds on it, but all these different areas of the knife, they're really designed to do different tasks. It's already got a finger choil here. What I've been talking about. So you can choke up on that thing to do the right type of work. Right? Great knife. This knife has never been used. I bought it. I had other knives I was using. I stuck this in a kit. This typically lives in the backpack that I wear when I hike up to the Hollywood sign. It's hidden in there. I'm not showing it to anybody. It's just in case, right? Something kooky happens, I get stuck up there or whatever. Who knows, right? What scenario could you invent? You're out on a hike in the city. It's really the city. Uh-oh. Something crazy happens. I got to survive. Of course not. Probably never going to happen. You're not going to break this knife, people. I mean, could you? Yeah, absolutely. I could break anything. You give me the right tools to do so. Why would I? This thing's going to hold up to anything you can throw at it. It does have a pouch on the sheath. And in this pouch, I have a Bic lighter and a survival kit in this tin. This is from Trader Joe's. There's a ferro rod in here, snare wire, strike anywhere matches, all the normal survival stuff. I think there's even a survival whistle in there. There's a piece of leather I can see in there. I got into this thing with slings. I never really got super proficient at it. But if you were out there and you didn't have a book or anything else to do and you already procured food and you got a shelter and everything else, you get some paracord and play with that piece of leather and you can get pretty good at using a sling. Davey killed Goliath with one. Okay, now we're going to get into the fun stuff. And some of this is not great. These two bottom knives are no joke. But you guys will remember, especially after Rambo, man, the hollow handle knife became a thing. Now, this one happens to come out of Japan. I got it super cheap because somebody fouled up the coating on it and didn't do a great job on sharpening it. It is razor sharp. It's very sharp. It's got this hollow handle here. I don't know, it's got this thing in here. I don't know what this is, but earlier I took this out and I blew on this. You got to hear this. Listen to this. What the heck is that? Is that a toy? Is that supposed to be used as a survival whistle? What's going on there? That is bizarre. I don't know what the heck that's about. Maybe you can tell me. I just think it's wild. Anyhow, nothing special. You can see there was probably a compass in this handle at one time, or this pommel rather. It's a little hollow on both sides, but that's probably what happened there. I could probably get something glued in there. It's probably more practical not having one, but I'll tell you right now, I'm never going to use this for anything. Guaranteed a two-piece design. This is probably just epoxied into this handle. The handles are never as deep. Usually there's a short tang here. You've seen this before. I don't need to get all into that. However, I do like that's big enough to put a finger. You know, it's I don't think it's anything super practical. I'm sure you could probably break this thing in a hurry. But I only picked it up because it looked kind of neat, and it was, I mean, it was probably $5 or something back in the day. This is interesting. Now, you guys may have heard the Buckmaster before. This is a Taiwanese knockoff. Um, and I did buy this thing. It didn't cost a lot of money. I think it was $40 or something way back in the day when I picked it up. And the reason I got it was because I just wanted to handle something. An original buck, you're going to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. At the time I was looking at this, you could get a buck for like $300, the Buckmaster. There are two threaded, pointy things on here. You could turn this thing into like a, geez, my brain is not working. A grappling hook, I suppose. You never would. There's a compass in here. There's a survival kit in here. I watched some tests on this knife on YouTube. Surprisingly, this thing actually held up pretty well. But again, to me, novelty item, don't care about it. Probably going to give it to a nephew or something at some point. But I don't mind the sheath. Other blades that size, sorry about hitting the camera, would fit in the sheath. And the sheath's not terrible. The stuff it comes with is all, cheesy. This compass is nothing to write home about. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't trust it necessarily. But it does have a little, I think you can, does that work on here? Maybe it's not this knife. Maybe it's another one. No, there's definitely a stone under this. Look at that. So you can sharpen the thing. Although that is a very coarse stone, nothing great. Why? I don't know. I don't think you're ever going to depend on this thing saving your life. I don't think you're going to really use this in a real situation. I don't think you should be putting this in your bug out bag. I think if you were a teenager and you're building the bug out bag and you think this is really cool, I get it. But if you were to really baton with this thing, or, if it broke, you can't be upset about it. You basically have to expect this thing to fail. That's just how I see it. Now, this one here is interesting. This is the Ator. You'll see reviews on this. Now, people will say that this is actually a pretty decent knife for what it is. I didn't buy this. I came home one day. There was a box at my door. It had my correct address on it, but not my name. It had no return address. It came with a card. It was right around New Year's, and the card says, "Wishing you a prosperous and safe, a safe and prosperous New Year, but just in case." This is kind of descriptive of what you typically will see. Now, it says World War VII on this. I don't recall looking that up. It's probably a production. There's probably a movie, like a cheap movie or something made, and these were made and given to the production crew, I'm guessing. If you're one of those people and you're watching this right now, tough. It's mine now. Nah. But there is a... Oh, yeah, that's right. I think this thing is spring-loaded in here for some ridiculous reason. Yeah. There's a survival kit in here with a spring to push it out. It's got Band-Aids and basic stuff. It has Asian writing in there. And it does have a compass in the handle. I opened this earlier. It does work. So, yeah, there's pretty heavy pommel on here. Again, this is something that I don't need to keep. I should just give this thing away. I don't know. It's kind of neat to have if you want a knife collection. It looks like I have a knife collection with all these knives, but it's actually made in China. It says it right on there. Now, this goes into the knife a bit, but it's clearly got like this kind of, I don't know, is that a cotter pin? It's just got a pin. It's pinned in place. You can actually knock that out and separate the blade from the handle completely. The handle is metal. Now, tests have been done on this knife, and it surprisingly holds up pretty well. I was surprised when I watched those videos. And this style sawback actually works. So yeah, but again, nothing I would use. I wouldn't use this at all. Now we're going to get to these two knives. Now, both of these knives are Schrade. Both of these knives were about $60, around there when they came out. And I believe they first came out at least 10 years ago, maybe more. They are both You're going to hear people say that what I'm about to say isn't true, but do your own research. Don't believe me and don't believe them. These are both made from solid hunks of steel, 1070, drop forged, high carbon steel. This sheath is actually a K-bar sheath I bought, Kydex sheath. I wrapped a bunch of cordage around, 550 cord. And in the kit here, I just got this actually has a sharpener with it. It's a SOG, it's a pretty decent one. It'll throw sparks here. You can see I've already used it. Diamond impregnated sharpener there, and your ceramic there. And then it comes with, I got this Leatherman here, classic Leatherman tool. I love these because it's a tight profile. Love them. And then what I did with this thing, what's great about this sheath, by the way, it's 2 points of retention. It's the Schrade Extreme Survival. Now these come with a toolkit. There's one in the other handle, so you'll see that in a moment. I encourage you to watch the videos on these things. They really hold up. Survival on Purpose did a great one. There's tons of videos on these that are 8, 9, 10 years old. This knife right now on eBay, I think somebody's got a new one. They're asking about $400 for it. That's insane. But if you were to look at a Chris Reeves, these are knockoffs of. Chris Reeves out of South Africa. He's the guy who originally kind of came up with this, the process, I suppose, to make these knives. You're talking $1,500 to $2,000 to get your grubby little paws on an original Chris Reeves version of this. So considering this is so well made, even at $300 or $400, it's a pretty good stinking knife. Now this knife is in a kit. This knife is in a kit. The Schrade FCHF 9 I showed you earlier, full tang 1/4 inch. That's in a kit, and the smaller version here I'm going to show you is in a kit. Now this knife, we're going to have to get the tape measure out. All right, sorry. Now this is just, it's way more practical size-wise. This is really great, you know, end of the world, you need something you can do everything with, fight, split logs, baton, camp craft, you know, it'll do just about anything you need it to do. This one here is more practical. You actually get a different style sheath and carry this on your person. The blade length on this, I'm pretty sure is 5.5 inches. Yeah, 5.5 inch blade. This one here is like a 7.5 inch blade. Yeah, 7.5 inch blade on this thing. This is just really, my brother, I told him how great this one was. He thought he bought it, but he bought the small one. He's a much larger man, and he got disappointed, so he just gave me the smaller version. And again, this comes with this silly thing, which everybody complained about. And then that guy on that channel, Survival on Purpose, I think 8 years ago, he did a video on the larger version. And Schrade sent him a survival kit that fits in the handle with another pommel, and inside that pommel was a compass. I've contacted Schrade recently. I haven't heard back from them yet. I probably won't. Asking them if the survival kit with the replacement pommel with the compass is available. And I've been meaning to, I think what's going on here is I think that this insert is just epoxied in here. This is more, I'm pretty certain these are aluminum. I think I could probably just use drill bits around this and pry that out, clean that up, and then glue my own compass in there. I've been meaning to do that for years. But again, I forget I even have this stuff. These things are just in kits, right? And then what I have in this thing here, I think, well, I could see it. It's a Bic and I believe another Leatherman. But obviously you could fit a lot more gear in there. So that's it. That's the knives I have, and the reason for them, to some degree, somewhat explained. Some of it's just, if you like to collect things and you enjoy history, a big thing for me is more the historical aspect of things. I mean, clearly, this is not a Roman gladius here, right? But it's representative of one, and it's just a neat thing to have. It's just neat to think about the progression of things. And I'm one of those weird dudes, when I watch something, I'm watching something historical, I'll oftentimes get the weapon out from that time, and it sounds corny or weird or whatever, and I know probably women have a problem with this. Can you tell I'm a bachelor? I like getting myself more into to a flick or something like that, or a documentary, and manhandling. Like I've got single action army revolvers that exact reproductions of the Colts that were made in 1873 and later, and it's just fun. It just kind of helps you get into things more, and it works your brain in a different way when you actually have an item and you can understand things. And also when you're watching the boob tube and you see these things, you can see how impractical sometimes they're being used by Hollywood. It doesn't even make any sense. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. It is, I'm not going to tell you this is like the best video on knives out there. This is just kind of going over some of the stuff I happen to own and have just sitting here, why I have it, what I use, what I don't use, and maybe you can learn something from that. This here, my dad had a eagle head knife. I gave it to my brother, had it reworked. This is out of Mexico. You've probably seen these on eBay. This is like, I always kind of saw these as like tourist knives. You go down there and you buy this thing, you're not going to do anything with it, but it's surprisingly well made. The tang goes in so far. It's pinned here. I'm assuming the tang goes in pretty far into the handle. Very sharp. It's not a polished steel. I don't know what the carbon content is on this. It's anyone's guess. But I suspect, this would definitely dispatch another human being. There's no doubt about that. But again, it was just dirt cheap. It just came into my world. I couldn't say no to it. It was just so neat. And again, look at that. This thing is actually better made and better designed for practicality than some of the other knives I've got. I think this thing would probably hold up. Maybe I should take some of these things out with me next time I'm in the van and in the forest and baton and do a bunch of things with these. And if I break them, who cares? Maybe that's what you'll see next when it comes to knives on this channel. That's it for now. Have a great day. Thanks for being here. Remember to be good to one another. Turn your brain on. One last thought on the kit and having these things and being prepared. It's just about peace of mind. Hopefully you'll never need any of this stuff. But if you did, you got it.